On Labor This Week, we'll look at the president's criticism of his own Federal Reserve head. We'll discuss the impending threat to retired and sick coal miners, the March jobs report, and we'll get a look at several of you getting it done at work. And much more. I'm Mark Harrison, and Labor This Week begins now. We begin with President Trump, who called on the Federal Reserve last week to cut interest rates and to take whatever additional steps might be necessary to stimulate the economy. As well, Mr. Trump nominated two very politically partisan men to positions on the 7-member board of governors of the Fed. And those members are Stephen Moore, who is currently an advisor to the president and founded the conservative Club for Growth and is considered a conservative-minded economist, and Herman Cain, a former Republican candidate for president who was forced to abandon his campaign in 2012 because of multiple claims of sexual harassment, a point the president seems to be tone deaf on unless it involves a political rival. Now, speaking to the press, the president said, "I personally think the Fed should drop rates. I think they have really slowed us down. There's no inflation. But despite that, we're doing very well," he said. And he's not exactly wrong when he does say that. Last Friday, the Labor Department reported that the U.S. economy added 196,000 jobs in March, the 102nd month straight that it has done so. And in spite of that, the president has consistently criticized his own appointed chair to the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, for raising interest rates. And the president wants the Fed to return to buying back assets like Treasury bonds and mortgage-backed securities as a way to push rates lower. And the idea of appointing politically minded allies to the board, however, of governors is looking very much like a politically motivated move to influence the Fed into heating up the economy even further as we head into Mr. Trump's re-election campaign. Now, according to Lawrence Summers, who is a former Treasury Secretary, he said that Trump's comments suggested the president's raw and total confusion on monetary policy and that publicly debating the Fed undermines confidence in our currency and in our country. Turning now to coal country. It's being called the American Miners Act of 2019 and has been introduced into the U.S. by Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia. And speaking from the floor of the Senate last week, Manchin said, "Right now, retired coal miners, health care, pensions, and black lung benefits are on the chopping block again. Specifically, the bill is aimed to protect some 1,200 miners and their dependents who stand to lose their health care coverage in the Westmoreland Mining Company bankruptcy. The courts are currently expected to allow Westmoreland to shed their responsibilities to the miners, but it is a threat we are seeing more and more." Now, Manchin continued, saying they've worked for this, they've negotiated for this, they are not asking for a handout, they're asking to get what they paid for and what they negotiated for, adding, "We have to keep our promise that was signed into law in the Krug-Lewis Agreement in 1946. The bill currently in the Senate seeks to allow the transfer of funds from the Surface Mining Control and Reclamation Act of 1977 to the 1974 United Mine Workers of America Pension Plan, a plan that was created by an executive order of President Harry Truman as a federal guarantee to the health and welfare of coal miners by creating what was known as a last man standing multi-employer and retirement system for miners and their dependents. These are not decadent pensions. The average benefit is $560 a month. To add to the situation, that pension plan left unfixed will currently run out of money in 2022. The bill is of no cost to taxpayers and seeks to extend the current tax on underground and surface mined coal charged to mining companies and would fund the Black Lung Disability Trust Fund, which benefits more than 25,000 miners, and would also bring the miners' pension plan more in line with traditional 401ks and extend its useful life, thereby taking away the threat of miners losing their pensions every time another coal company files for bankruptcy protection under the bankruptcy laws. All right, it's time for a new feature here at TLN where we showcase a few of you who are out there getting it done for America. First up, we have Ray Heridia out here getting it done as a 5th-year M-Card electrician's helper with the IBEW local in New York. Thanks for that great shot, Ray. And up next is Penny Oliver. She's the one on the left in the light jacket. Penny is with the American Postal Workers Union, Local 6862 of Topeka, Kansas. Penny and her co-workers are getting it done and spreading the word on behalf of all the postal workers in our country that both the U.S. Senate and House have bills pending that would privatize the post office and sell it off to the highest bidder. And they would like you to understand that the post office does not receive a nickel of your tax dollars, but rather is self-funded by the postage it charges. All right, it's time for some short takes. In addition to the economy adding nearly 200,000 jobs to the rolls in March, the unemployment rate remained unchanged at 3.8%, and the very lackluster report from February was revised upward from 20 to 33,000 jobs. Hourly earnings rose 3.4%, and that prompted the chief economist, Beth Ann Bovino at S&P Global Ratings, to say that households and workers have pretty strong purchasing power, and they can spend more at the mall. Actually, Beth, no one goes to the mall anymore. We all order from Amazon, who plans to employ robots and drones in the very near future. Moving on, the Department of Labor has proposed to limit claims against big companies for employment law violations by franchises and subcontractors. That is not a good thing. This means that if your local mom and pop owned McDonald's, for example, franchise screws you out of some pay or treats you in violation of legal work rules, you can no longer hold the corporation of McDonald's itself, the big corporation, at fault in a court of law. Rather, you and your fellow workers can try to get money from a poorly capitalized small business that can simply decide to declare bankruptcy and leave town, leaving you holding an empty bag of fries. Labor Secretary Alexander Acosta seems to think this is a good idea, but he thought giving Jeffrey Epstein 13 months of work release for soliciting underage girls for prostitution was also a good idea. There is now a 60-day window open for public comments to the Labor Department on this issue. Turning to the Democrats, they are now divided, I know, big surprise, over a wage bill introduced by Representative Terry Sewell of Alabama to create regional wage minimums based on the local cost of living rather than a national $15 an hour wage. Returning back to Secretary Acosta, he testified on Capitol Hill that he was in favor of cutting his already underfunded department's budget by 10%. Congress has in the past 2 years denied any cuts to the department that is in charge of enforcing labor laws. A report by the Bureau of Labor Statistics found that Americans over the age of 55 are losing jobs at the highest rate in 4 years. That's a disturbing trend. And President Trump's budget has proposed to cut pensions, freeze pay, and limit bargaining rights for all federal workers in his latest budget proposal. Not good. Some good news, though, as Google said it will require its contractors to pay a $15 an hour minimum wage, as well as providing those employees with health benefits, sick leave, and paid parental leave. This coming after more than 900 Google workers signed a letter pressing the company on the way it treats temps, contract employees, and vendors, noting that more than 50% of Google's workforce came under those descriptions. And finally, billionaire Ray Dalio, writing in a published paper, has said that he thinks U.S. income inequality is a national emergency. And he would be right. All right, let's take a look at a couple more pictures of you guys out there getting it done. Mitch Ponce, who is the business agent and works as a union rep for Iron Workers Local 433 in Los Angeles, California, where they are doing some spectacular work on this bridge, sent this picture in. Look at that. Try doing that kind of work with a low-paid, untrained worker. Yeah, that's awesome, guys. Nice job out there. Mitch, thanks. And finally, one last picture of a man known to us as Scott the Lineman, who was shown here in the Virgin Islands working after Hurricane Maria and helping the folks down there get their electricity and their lives back in order. Scott is a self-described avid advocate for unions and workers. Great work, Scott. Thank you. And finally, tonight we have a story of Hopton Kiffin, who is a train operator with the MTA in New York City and a member of the Transport Workers Union Local 100. Hopton was operating the northbound number 5 train when he spotted a 13-year-old boy dangerously close to the deadly third rail and in danger of being struck. Hopton stopped his train and helped the boy, who was reported to be suffering from depression, climb safely aboard his train. Hopton, who is 51, said, "It was just part of my job. I'm a father and an uncle, so I felt protective of him." What a great name and a great job. Thanks, Hopton. That's it for us here at Labor This Week. Please remember to follow us on Twitter at Labor Network, on Facebook at The Labor Network, and on YouTube at Labor This Week. I'm Mark Harrison.